Welcome to the weigh-in. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by former professional MMA fighter Billy Ward to get you set with our favorite underdogs and our top props for UFC 282 going down on Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Billy, favorite underdogs. I'm going to go to you first. You're looking at the matchup between Alex Morono and Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Yeah, Ponzinibbio was supposed to fight Robbie Lawler on this card before something happened with Lawler and he pulled out. And Morono stepped up on short notice. They're doing it at 180, which I don't think necessarily matters too much, but it takes the weight cut out of the equation. And that's one of the reasons we want to fade guys on short notice fights is if they have to kill themselves to make weight. That wasn't the case with Morono. And I just think this is a much tougher matchup for Ponzinibbio than Lawler was. Lawler's obviously way at the tail end of his career. I think Ponzinibbio's getting up there in age a little bit too. He's 1-3 in the last 4 years. Big win over Miguel Baeza, but other than that, hasn't really looked that great. And for Morono, this is honestly pretty similar to the Matthew Semmelsberger fight. Very aggressive, athletic guys, throw really hard but tend to fade. And Morono passed that one easily. He won 30-27, I think, on two of the scorecards, 29-28 on the other. So it's always a little bit risky on these short notice fights. We don't know what kind of shape a guy was in. We don't know how well prepared he is. But this is a totally different fighter for Ponzinibbio to prepare for too. So I think this one would probably be about an even money line where Morono to have a full camp. I'm just going to place my wager on the fact that he's probably in good shape. He wouldn't have taken the fight if he weren't. So to get him at plus 148 is solid value.
I'm going to look at the co-main event between Jared Gordon and Paddy the Batty Pimblett, and I'm going to take Jared Flash Gordon. You can get him at plus 190 at FanDuel, but there's numbers as high as plus 220 out there if you shop around on Jared Gordon. I'm sure the books are going to need Gordon to win this weekend with all the public love that is out there for Paddy, all the public support that comes in on him. But it does seem like the betting community and the more serious MMA bettors are willing to put their money behind Jared Gordon here. Now, Paddy tends to attract a lot of negative attention just because of the hype train, and people just generally want to fade these hype trains that come along. And in Paddy's case, I get the desire to bet against him because I do not view him as a future top 15 ranked fighter, a top 15 ranked lightweight in this division. I think his talent falls somewhere below that and below the ranked lightweights at the UFC level. So looking at guys who I've wanted to bet against him with, I've been waiting for a spot, and I think Jared Gordon is finally the right time to pull a trigger. Getting a similar number on Gordon as you got in his last fight against Jordan Leavitt. Gordon, a much more physical fighter than what you got from Leavitt, a better striker too. I view Gordon as the better striker in this matchup with Pimblett. I think he has the defensive jiu-jitsu, the defensive wrestling to keep this one on the feet. And I think he's got the ability to take Paddy down if he wants at times as well. So Jared Gordon, a very well-rounded fighter, absolute gamer, gonna fight for your money. Is going to be at a 5-inch reach discrepancy here. Don't think that's going to matter considering the striking advantage I give him. He's the better fighter. Paddy is the better athlete. Paddy a bit more tenacious, but I think that tenacity will wilt the longer this fight goes, particularly if he's having trouble. So getting that similar price on Gordon as he got in his last fight, I think he has a much better chance of pulling off the upset than Leavitt did. Jared Gordon at minimum plus 190, but shop around for the best available number. And Billy, in terms of top props, you're looking at Jared Gordon as well.
I am, and you kind of touched at some of the reasons there, but I'm really looking at Paddy Pimblett to fade here. I think he's a far better hammer than he is a nail. He's got some major deficiencies defensively. Everyone wants to point out the striking deficiencies. He is real wild with his grappling. He leaves himself in a lot of situations where he can get caught with stuff, and Gordon's a fairly strong grappler. But also, if you just look at what's happened with these guys when fights have gone long, Paddy's lost both of his last two decisions. Gordon's won, I think, 4 or 5 fights that have gone to decision. Has some late stoppages in the UFC as well. So I'm looking at his round 2 and his round 3 finish props. It's plus 1,700 in round 2, plus 2,000 in round 3. That's the prop I'm looking at ahead of time. I also think it's a great spot to bet Gordon live. Pimblett's probably going to come out, have a fairly strong open round, be very aggressive, wild, coming forward. But Gordon's not going to fade from that, and he's going to push back a little bit, apply some of that pressure that Pimblett normally applies on other people, which I think will pay dividends. So you might even be able to get that Jared Gordon line, the money line, at a much better price if you wait for a round. But then also the round 2 and round 3 finish props are just way too long right now.
Yeah, I was taking consideration for Gordon by decision around 5-1 myself. I don't mind those late round props either, but I do see Gordon winning more of an extended fight, particularly if this gets out of the first round. I think it eventually does tilt his way. And speaking of fights that I do expect to go longer, my top prop for Saturday, going with another goes the distance bet, but this one is in the Chris Curtis Joaquin Buckley fight. You can get as high as plus 178 at FanDuel. That's the best number in the market. I actually projected this closer to a pick'em price. I think this number is way too wide considering the skills of these two fighters, the size of these two fighters. These are two welterweights who are fighting up at middleweight, neither of whom cuts weight, neither of whom carries significant power. Buckley doesn't hit as hard as his physique would suggest. Curtis, more of a point fighter. I actually view Curtis as the more durable of the two. I think he's the more likely to get the knockout if these two end up getting in a slugfest. And perhaps they stand in the middle, swing it out, and see what happens. But it's much more likely based on how they fight historically that Buckley is going to be trying to use the outside of the cage, and Curtis is going to be trying to track him down like he did in his last fight with Jack Hermanson. So Joaquin Buckley, Chris Curtis to go to a decision. I think this should be closer to a pick'em price, getting it all the way up at plus 178. You can also dabble with some over 1.5 and some over 2.5 rounds as well. That'll do it for us. Make sure to check out our best bets and our picks for the main event for UFC 282, which you can also find on the Action Network's YouTube channel. Make sure to check out all of our content on actionnetwork.com.